Good morning and welcome to the new edition of my live comments. The parliamentary democracy normally works with a certain pattern. And the pattern is that cabinet responsibility is there. But to discharge the responsibility, one minister is charged and entrusted with the job. Primus inter pares is the Prime Minister who, as the first among the equal, gives direction and leadership. But what's happening in Ottawa, as far as the environment is concerned, is something nonplussing and confusion. And at times, confusion is worse confounded. When I look at the workload of Catherine McKenna, it appears that she is an extremely busy environment minister. She is meeting today or tomorrow with the representatives of European Union and China to seek their help and advice and suggestions to set up a new website to teach children about climate change. Imagine inviting foreign experts and the foreign political leaders, all high profile, to set up a website. She is hitting right and left on the critics so that she can put climate change back on the NAFTA agreement and ensure that they have an important place. But what is amazing is that NAFTA is primarily about trade agreement. It's not about the environment. Environment is ancillary to the trade and to the business. So why is she setting up this high-profile mission consisting of leading politicians and CEOs? But mind you, no pollution experts, no scientists. And the mission's job is to advise how to put NAFTA talks, which seem to be derailed, back on the rail as far as environment issues is concerned. Great stuff. And extremely entertaining. You see, we had a goal. I'm reminded of Martin Luther King when he said, we had a dream. Well, we had a goal, and the goal was that taking 2005 emissions as a base by the year 2030, that's in a 25-year period, we were to reduce the emissions by 30%. Now, as an environment minister, her first job should be to prepare a roadmap and give to the people how we are going to reach there. And that roadmap is nowhere. Nobody has talked about drafting that. Nobody has talked about consultations. Nobody has talked about the steps to be taken for that purpose. All her energies are in PR stuff. Doing this and doing that and doing all ancillary work, but no real work. And the other side, our Honorable Prime Minister Justin Trudeau and Natural Resources Mr. Jim Carr are trying their level best day in and day out to promote the fossil fuel industry. What a contradiction. The Minister for Environment is doing all the PR stuff, climate change, and the Prime Minister and the Natural Resources Minister are trying to revive, resuscitate, and strengthen the fossil fuel industry. And how are they doing it? Through pipeline development and recent tweaks to the offshore drilling regulations, for which they have discussed with the industry. I have nothing against fossil fuels, you know that. But when the people talk about the fossil fuels and the bad effects, and then they take action to promote them, well, that's not very pleasing. And this duo of the Prime Minister and Natural Resources Minister, they are talking about pipelines that depend on a 20-year commitment. So it covers the deadline of 2030 and the growth in the world that nobody believes that by that time oil would be really important. It's not a question of environment and climate change. The change in technology and the change in the fuel. At one time, coal was extremely important. Then the steam was there. Then oil came in. But oil is on the way out. And what is happening is that we are planning for 20 years, by which time oil would be not used. It might be used for certain other purposes, but rather than as a fossil fuel. And the case for the new pipeline is running ahead of the reality. Now, International Energy Agency has come up with a scenario, and that is that 2.7 degrees centigrade rise in temperature can be dangerous, which it is. It is double than the aspirational scenario of Minister McKenna, which was established in Paris Agreement. So that Paris Agreement increase was half of what it is actually going to be. And now, coming to the oil sands and the oil, let's not forget that in the next 20 years, England, France, India, and China, these four countries are banning petrol and diesel-driven cars. China has said 15 years, no cars after that. India has said 30 years, no cars. I mean, say, fossil fuel-driven cars. They might be electric cars, there might be hydrogen cell-driven cars, there might be any number, but not a solar cars. So we blame often that China and India are the worst polluters in the world. They are adding thousands of cars every day. The roads are cluttered, which they are. But they have been imaginative enough. And I think the first country to ban the cars was Prime Minister Modi when he said that after 2030, no diesel and petrol cars would be there, gas cars would be there. China naturally could not tolerate that India should proclaim something. So they said, okay, if they are going to finish by 2030, we'll finish off these cars by 2025. And then European Union came in with France, and then England separately, that 2040 is the limit they have put. So by 2030 to 2040, let's assume there'll be no cars and no need for fuel. So for whom we are building the pipelines? Would it not be a dead investment? Would it not be an investment which does not give any return, but is going to be a burden, the payment? Now, if the temperature increases really 2.7 degrees Celsius, it could be a disaster. And what they are planning, the carbon tax, high carbon tax, to shift and force the world to a... And even if I look at the Paris Protocol, the Paris Agreement, there is no possibility of the oil sands growth. So then why are we doing it? On one side, the laggards in the climate file, like China and India, are tracking well ahead of their emission reduction commitments. On the other side, McKenna is shouting from the rooftops that we are going to ensure that climate change and environmental protection are the highlights of NAFTA and our future policies. Prime Minister agrees with her and also starts promoting oil pipes, making investments that are not going to be useful. I'm reminded of a king in India, Muhammad bin Tughlaq, who shifted the capital from Delhi to Daulatgiri and Daulatgiri to Delhi. And he's called the most intelligent and most foolish king that India had ever seen. There's an essential contradiction in the heart of the Trudeau government's approach to climate change. It claims firm commitment to action, even to the point of pushing it in NAFTA, which might kill NAFTA, and simultaneously promoting fossil fuel sector that has no future if the world follows through the Paris Accord. So let's ignore what McKenna and Trudeau are doing. Let's ignore for the time being. And let's see what they are doing really. And what Canada is doing. Between the year 2005 to 2010, that was the time when the Conservative government was in power, and they are not in favor of the anti-fossil fuel lobby. They were all for fuels. But during that period, those 10 years, Canada's emission dropped by 5%. Well, the critics of the Harper government would say that 5% is negligible. But then they did drop by 5%. And what is more shocking is that during the period of 2010 to 2015, they increased by 3%. Shocked? You should not be, because there is another shock due. And this happened even in Ontario, when Ontario, the biggest polluter, biggest producer of the cars, was moving away from coal, a major shift compared to the scope of the problem. So we are spinning our wheels. Now, while India and China are going ahead of their commitments, USA has experienced a very impressive decline since 2005, and that's 9%. Till today, USA has decreased its emission by 9%. So who is promoting pollution? USA, India and China, or Canada? Looking at the statistics and looking at the facts, it's Canada which is guilty party, not India and China, not USA. Despite whatever the White House says, the actions show that they have reduced the emissions by 9%. India has reduced emissions, China has reduced emissions, and Canada has increased emissions. Then I hear these politicians come up with another zany idea: carbon tax, put a price on carbon, right? But is that a game changer? I'm sorry, I have to disappoint you. The British Columbia carbon tax, you have heard so much about, was ineffective, and there was no emission reduction in the last 3 years when the carbon tax was imposed. And as a matter of fact, the reduction what was there was because of the high recession. High taxes can change consumer behavior, but not the way they are happening. Now, Ontario has spent 1.5 billion on the carbon tax without any return. So, fight against the climate change is leaving Canada far behind. As I said earlier, 2040 is the last date, which is of Britain and France. 2025 is China and Norway. 2030 is India and Germany. And the whole car industry, auto industry in Germany, has committed that they are going to use only electric vehicles from 2030 onwards. There will be no production of the diesel cars. So does mere talk by Minister McKenna change the climate action? Is it the only thing? What we require is a good plan and a focus that is sadly lacking. Maybe somebody at this China EU summit will say, brave words, Miss McKenna, but what do you plan to do? And in case at this summit which is happening this week, McKenna is asked this question loud and clear. Yes, Minister McKenna, we appreciate what you are saying, but what are you planning to do? I can assure you the minister would have no answer to this question, and which is a very legitimate question. It's really too bad. It seems like McKenna truly believes that she's trying to do something without doing anything, and Trudeau is doing exactly opposite what McKenna is at least planning to do. So one is planning to reduce the emissions, not doing it, and the other is increasing the emissions. Lord, how long would they fool the people? And how long would they fool the international leaders? You can fool all the people for some time. Some of the people for all the times. But you cannot fool all the people all the time. I hope the Mandarin sitting in Ottawa understand this fact and come out with a policy that is feasible, that is practical, and implement it, not only talk about it. The day of mere PR without showing good work are over. The day of action is now, right now. Thank you.